Other big Penn State sports news of the week. Penn State basketball has kind of. Oh, sorry, let me try. That was actually my impersonation of Penn State basketball. Can't even make the right noises. Penn State basketball is kind of it up lately. There we go. That's a technical term. Let's you posed an interesting question to me. You basically said you thought that people shouldn't be as upset as people have come off as upset about Penn State basketball being so lately, because they were picked to finish 17th in the conference, and that's about where they're slotted right now. Did I get the gist of that question?
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I get that they got an early season win or two, and people are like, oh, they're going to use that 17th. Maybe I said they're going to use that 17th place pick and rally against it. Mm-hmm. But the stuff I've seen, and part of it is the bracketology, like when are teams in or out, so much earlier than it used to be 5 or 6 years ago, the tournament. So they've been talking about is Penn State on the bubble. And people are surprised that they're struggling. Well, why? They were picked to finish 17th. Like, I guess I don't understand that.
So when you texted me this and I retorted with this, and this was kind of what the precipice of the article was, I think there's a couple things. Number one, this is a coach that supposedly knows how to win, has taken VCU to the tournament X number of times. I don't have the number in front of me, and all within relative recency, including some of his players that he brought over with him. I think the other thing was the fact that you had a core back. Now that core between Ace Baldwin, Nick, and even Puff, those guys have kind of been injured, dealing with injury stuff, which is fine, and that's one thing. But the fact that they're a senior or veteran core, and one of the things that we've seen to success for college basketball programs outside of the like really hot like Duke with Cooper Flag right now is like those teams actually tend to perform well because they're more weathered. They've been in those situations. I think that for me, that's where those expectations came from of like, this is a pretty good team on that standpoint. Take care of it. Do it that way. The other thing that is frustrating, and we talked about this a little bit, is Mike Rhodes' plea to get people to come to the games, and the sweat with us thing, which is to me is just like the remembrance feels exactly carbon copy of the Pat Chambers era of where things were at, and how he would beg people to come to games, and how it was like, oh, we're just a bounce away, just a shot away. And that's where Penn State has largely been over the last, let's call it 3-4 games, minus maybe the Illinois game. And so that's why I think people are frustrated, because we've already lived through that in some sense. And when you've lived through that, seen that, your red flags go up a lot quicker, because you're like, oh, we did this for 8 years. And yes, toward the end, it did work in the year that they went in 2020, and then COVID happens, right? But then he gets fired and, or resigns or whatever's, and now undoes all of the program's progress back to kind of square one. The other thing I think is, fair or not, we're comparing him to Micah Shrewsbury, who took his team that he built from scratch to the tournament in his second season.
No, I think that all makes sense. I guess I don't know that upperclassmen or senior led matters any much anymore with how stuff will turn over. But programs like Penn State, right? Like that's the model, I guess, right? You get a little better, you get older, you have a couple of transfers in, and you're in a position to succeed. So are you concerned then, as probably more of a basketball fan than me, that, hey, this is kind of the model, and it seemed like they were positioned for the model and things aren't going well?
I'm concerned in two areas. Number one, the rec hall game, they did not have energy, and that crowd seemed to be on top of them, was very involved even throughout the entire course of the evening. And I think that's concerning to me, one. And I'm concerned kind of going back to those red flags of like, this just feels like deja vu all over again. And the last time that took 8 years for this to work. I'm not at all saying that like Mike Rhodes should be on the hot seat or anything like that. I'm just saying that this isn't like, there needs to be a tone shift that we're aware that things aren't going the way they are, but the covering it up with that kind of methodology and making these pleas and things like that. That doesn't fly here because we've lived through that, seen that before, and it doesn't work. I think that, but to me, the bigger thing was the lack of energy is largely concerning, just because I understand they're in a rut right now, but they can, now the tournament's really tough, but like they could have, with a win over Ohio State, who I think they were favored against, probably at least put themselves back in the conversation a little bit. And they go out and play in the program showcase game really flat, and in a way that was very disappointing to see.